Welcome to Life Stories, where we bring you heartfelt tales of resilience, love, and transformation. Today's story takes us on an emotional journey of betrayal, heartbreak, and ultimately, self-discovery. Follow Emily as she overcomes the devastating betrayal by her fiancé and sister, faces the challenges of rebuilding her life, and finds love and strength in unexpected places. It's a story of courage, letting go of the past, and creating a brighter future. Stay with us as we dive into this inspiring tale of hope and second chances. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Life Stories to begin today's journey. I stared at my phone, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst. The screen glowed with an image that felt like a dagger piercing my chest. There they were, my fiancé, Mark, and my little sister, Ashley, wrapped in each other's arms, their faces radiant with joy. The caption beneath the photo read, "Can't wait for our future together." Those 6 words were like a punch to the gut, knocking the air from my lungs. My hands trembled so badly I could barely hold the phone. I looked around the living room, the place Mark and I had called home. It had always felt warm and full of love, but now the walls seemed to close in on me, suffocating and cold. My mind raced, trying to make sense of what I was seeing. But no explanation could lessen the blow. The sound of the front door opening jolted me back to reality. Mark walked in, his face lighting up with that same charming smile that had once made my knees weak. He had no idea what he was walking into. I stood up, holding the phone out toward him, the image glowing between us like an accusation. "What is this?" I demanded, my voice trembling but resolute. Mark's smile vanished instantly. His expression shifted to one of shock and guilt. He stammered, "Emily, it's not what it looks like." "Not what it looks like," I repeated, my voice rising with incredulity. "You're literally embracing my sister, Mark. What else could it possibly be?" He faltered, his eyes darting away from mine. It was a mistake," he said, his tone pleading. "A moment of weakness. A mistake," I echoed, my voice breaking. "You call betraying your fiancée with her own sister a mistake? Really?" The room seemed to spin as the reality of his betrayal settled over me. I had loved this man. I had trusted him with my dreams, my future. And Ashley, my little sister who had grown up looking up to me, had shattered every bond of loyalty and love. I felt a mix of heartbreak and anger swell within me. Mark tried to explain, stumbling over his words. But I had heard enough. The initial shock gave way to a wave of clarity. I had always thought betrayal would come with more warning signs, some sense of foreboding. But this hit me like lightning on a clear day. Swift and devastating. "It's over, Mark," I said, my voice steadier than I expected. "There won't be a wedding tomorrow. You can go." He stared at me, his eyes wide with disbelief. For a moment, he seemed ready to argue, to fight for a second chance. But the look on my face must have told him it was pointless. Without another word, he turned and left. The next day was a storm of emotions. Canceling the wedding felt surreal, as though I were trapped in someone else's nightmare. I called vendors, returned dresses, and notified guests. Each conversation felt like another layer of heartbreak. By evening, I had to face the hardest task of all, telling my family. We gathered in the living room of my parents' house in St. Louis, the same room where we'd celebrated countless birthdays and holidays. Now, the warmth of those memories felt like a cruel contrast to the cold reality I was about to share. My parents sat on the couch, their expressions growing more concerned with each word I spoke. Ashley sat in silence, her face pale and tense. When I finished explaining, the room fell into a heavy silence. My father cleared his throat, struggling to find the right words. "Emily," he began cautiously, "Ashley is still young. She's just a child." "Really? And as for Mark, well, men will be men." I stared at him in disbelief. "Dad, are you seriously justifying what they did?" I asked, my voice rising. Ashley is my sister. And Mark was my fiancé. How can you dismiss this as if it's nothing? My mother chimed in, her voice soft but firm. Honey, we understand you're hurt. But Ashley has always been delicate. You know that. She needs extra care, extra attention. We can't abandon her now. Abandon her? I said bitterly. What about me? Who's going to take care of my pain? Who's going to understand my broken heart? Their responses rang hollow, echoing in the emptiness of my shattered dreams. I realized in that moment that their loyalty lay with Ashley, the youngest, the one who they always believed needed their protection. My pain, my betrayal, was secondary. That night, I sat alone in my apartment, staring out at the city lights. The enormity of what had happened weighed heavily on me. But amidst the sorrow, a spark of resolve began to take shape. I couldn't control what Mark or Ashley had done, nor could I change my parents' inability to fully support me. But I could choose how I responded. I could choose to walk away from the wreckage and start anew. As I packed a suitcase, readying myself to leave behind the people and places that had caused me so much pain, I knew this decision wasn't just about escaping. It was about reclaiming my life, piece by piece. The morning after I left Mark, I woke up in my childhood bedroom, the faint scent of lavender from my mother's potpourri lingering in the air. It was a cruel reminder of the comfort this house once brought me. Now, it felt alien, its walls lined with memories that no longer felt like mine. My parents had asked me to stay over for the weekend, insisting that we needed to talk things through. I could already feel the storm brewing. At breakfast, the tension was palpable. Ashley sat across from me, her eyes cast downward as she pushed scrambled eggs around her plate. My parents exchanged hesitant glances, as though silently strategizing how to approach the subject. Finally, my father cleared his throat. Emily, he began, his tone measured but unnervingly light. What happened with Mark and Ashley, well, it's unfortunate. But it's not worth tearing this family apart over. I nearly choked on my coffee. Unfortunate, I repeated, my voice rising despite my best efforts to stay calm. Dad, they betrayed me. Ashley didn't just make a mistake, she destroyed our bond. How can you downplay this? Sweetheart, my mother interjected, her tone soft but insistent. You have to understand that Ashley is still young. She's barely out of college. And she doesn't always think things through. You can't expect her to act with the same maturity as you. I looked at Ashley, hoping for some semblance of remorse. She glanced up briefly, her lips parting as though she might say something. But then she looked away again. It was as if she was waiting for someone else to clean up her mess. And what about Mark? I pressed. Is his behavior excused too because he's just a man? My father sighed, his expression one of exasperation. Look, Emily, men can be impulsive. It's just how they're wired. But you've always been the strong one in this family. We're counting on you to hold things together. Hold things together? I echoed, my voice trembling with disbelief. You're asking me to overlook this, to forgive them, for the sake of family. Do you even hear yourselves? My mother reached across the table, placing her hand on mine. We're not asking you to forgive overnight, she said gently. But Ashley is your sister. Family is family. And we have to look out for each other. Even when it's hard. I pulled my hand away, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. It's always about Ashley, isn't it? She's the baby. The fragile one. The one who needs protecting. But what about me? Who's looking out for me? My mother's gaze faltered. But she didn't answer. My father leaned back in his chair, his arms crossed, as though tired of the conversation already. Ashley finally spoke, her voice quiet but defensive. I didn't mean for this to happen, she said, her eyes meeting mine briefly. It happened. I'm sorry. Okay. Sorry, I said, shaking my head. That's all you have to say. Sorry doesn't erase the pain you caused. Sorry doesn't fix what you've broken. The room fell silent. My parents exchanged another glance, one filled with an unspoken plea for me to relent. But I couldn't. Not this time. After breakfast, I retreated to the guest room. Needing space to breathe, I stared out the window at the backyard where Ashley and I had played as children. I could still picture us chasing fireflies on summer evenings, laughing until our sides hurt. Those memories now felt like distant echoes, tainted by the present. I sat there for hours, replaying the conversation in my head, trying to make sense of their reaction. How could my parents, the people who were supposed to love me unconditionally, dismiss my pain so easily? Was it really that simple for them to brush this under the rug and move on? Did they truly believe family loyalty outweighed betrayal? By evening, I had my answer. My parents and Ashley were sitting in the living room, laughing softly as they watched a movie. The sight made my stomach churn. They had already begun to move past what had happened, while I felt like I was drowning in it. I knew then that staying in this house, in this city, would only prolong my agony. My family wasn't going to change. They had made their priorities clear, and I wasn't one of them. If I wanted to heal, I needed to leave not just Mark, but all of them. That night, I packed my bags in silence. As I zipped the suitcase closed, I felt a mixture of sadness and resolve. This wasn't the life I had imagined, but it was the life I had. And if I couldn't count on my family to support me, I would learn to stand on my own. Before leaving, I paused by Ashley's bedroom door, my hand hovering over the doorknob. I thought about saying goodbye, about giving her one last chance to make things right. But then I let my hand fall. Some bridges were better left burned. The decision to leave St. Louis wasn't just about escaping my family, it was about reclaiming my life. 4 days after my parents' refusal to understand my pain, I felt like I was moving through a haze. Each morning, I woke up with a heavy heart, the weight of their betrayal pressing down on me like a lead blanket. But amidst the sadness, there was also a growing clarity. Staying would only keep me stuck in their shadow. I began preparing for the move in quiet determination, researching jobs and apartments in New York City. The thought of living in a place so vibrant and full of possibilities gave me hope, even if the idea of starting over was terrifying. I didn't tell my parents right away. I wasn't ready for another round of arguments about family loyalty or guilt-laden pleas to stay for Ashley's sake. Instead, I focused on what I could control, packing my things, updating my resume, and finding a way forward. One afternoon, while I was sorting through my belongings, Ashley knocked softly on the door of my childhood bedroom. I hesitated before answering, unsure if I was ready for whatever she had to say. When I opened the door, she stood there, her expression a mix of guilt and defiance. "Can we talk?" she asked. I stepped aside, motioning for her to come in. She perched on the edge of my bed, fiddling with the hem of her sweater. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence was heavy, filled with unspoken words and lingering resentment. "I know you're angry," she began, her voice barely above a whisper. "And you have every right to be. What I did was wrong. I know that." Her words were unexpected, and for a brief moment, I felt a flicker of hope that maybe, just maybe, she truly understood the gravity of her actions. But as she continued, that hope faded. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she said, her eyes darting away from mine. "But you know how Mark can be. He's charming. And I don't know. I guess I just got caught up in it." Caught up in it. As if her actions were the result of some uncontrollable force, rather than deliberate choices. My jaw tightened, and I struggled to keep my voice steady. "Do you even hear yourself, Ashley?" I asked. "You didn't just get caught up in it. You made a choice that hurt me more than you can imagine." She looked down, her hands twisting in her lap. "I don't know how to fix this," she said quietly. "You can't," I replied. "Some things can't be fixed. The finality of my words hung in the air. Ashley nodded slowly, her shoulders slumping in defeat. "I'm sorry," she said again. But this time, it sounded more like an acknowledgement than an apology. When she left the room, I felt a strange sense of relief. For the first time, I wasn't holding on to the hope that she would make things right. I was letting go not just of Ashley, but of the version of my family I had always believed in. It was painful, but it was necessary. The day of my departure came quicker than I expected. I packed the last of my belongings into the trunk of my car, my parents watching from the porch with somber expressions. My father offered a stiff hug, while my mother held on a little longer, her voice breaking as she said, "Please don't let this be goodbye. I'll call." I promised, though I wasn't sure if I meant it. Part of me knew that distance was the only way I could heal. As I drove away, the familiar streets of my childhood blurred in the rearview mirror. Each mile felt like a weight lifting off my shoulders. Though my heart ached with the bittersweetness of leaving, I thought about Ashley, about my parents, about the life I was leaving behind. But I also thought about the life waiting for me in New York, a life where I could rebuild, free from the pain and betrayal that had defined the past few months. By the time I crossed into New York City, the sun was setting, casting the skyline in hues of gold and pink. The sight took my breath away, filling me with a sense of hope I hadn't felt in weeks. This was my fresh start, my chance to create a life that was truly mine. And for the first time in what felt like forever, I believed it was possible. Arriving in New York City felt like stepping into another world. The city pulsed with energy, its towering buildings and bustling streets a stark contrast to the quiet suburban life I had left behind. As I navigated through the chaos, I found comfort in the anonymity it offered. Here, no one knew my story, no one looked at me with pity or whispered behind my back. It was a fresh start, a blank slate. The first few weeks were a whirlwind of adjustment. I moved into a modest apartment in Brooklyn, its exposed brick walls and creaky floors a far cry from the cozy home I had shared with Mark. But it was mine, and that made it enough. My new job as a project manager at a mid-sized company demanded most of my attention, and I welcomed the distraction. Work became my refuge, a place where I could focus on tasks and deadlines instead of heartbreak and betrayal. Still, the loneliness crept in during quiet moments. At night, as I lay in bed listening to the distant hum of the city, memories of my past life would surface. I'd think about the laughter that once filled my family's house, the plans I had made with Mark, and the sister I had loved so deeply. It was a grief that came in waves, sometimes gentle and sometimes overwhelming. One evening, as I returned home from work, I noticed a man working in the garden next door. He was tall, with disheveled brown hair and a relaxed demeanor that contrasted sharply with the frenetic pace of the city. As I fumbled with my keys, he looked up and smiled. "Hi there," he said, his voice warm and friendly. "You must be new here. I'm Ryan, your neighbor." His openness caught me off guard, but I managed a smile. "Hi, I'm Emily." Ryan wiped his hands on his jeans and extended one toward me. "Nice to meet you, Emily. If you ever need anything or just want to know the best coffee spots in the area, let me know." I nodded, mumbling a polite thanks before retreating into my apartment. His kindness lingered in my mind, a small but comforting reminder that not everyone in the world was out to hurt me. Over the following weeks, I began to see more of Ryan. He was always outside, tending to his garden or fixing something around his house. We'd exchange pleasantries, our conversations growing slightly longer each time. One afternoon, as I was coming home with groceries, he called out from his yard. "Hey, Emily, you look like you could use a break. Want to grab a coffee?" I hesitated, the instinct to decline bubbling up. But then I thought, why not? A cup of coffee couldn't hurt. "Sure," I said, surprising even myself. We walked to a small cafe a few blocks away. its cozy interior filled with the aroma of freshly brewed coffee and the sound of soft jazz. As we sipped our drinks, Ryan asked about my life, his questions gentle and unintrusive. I found myself opening up more than I expected, sharing bits and pieces of my journey to New York. When I mentioned my family, his expression softened. "That sounds tough," he said, his voice filled with empathy. "But it's brave. What you did, starting over like this." His words struck a chord in me. For so long, I had seen myself as broken, a victim of betrayal and loss. But Ryan's perspective made me wonder if there was strength in what I had done, in choosing to leave and build something new. As the weeks turned into months, Ryan and I grew closer. He became a constant presence in my life, offering support and laughter in equal measure. We explored the city together, visiting art galleries, parks, and hole-in-the-wall restaurants. With him, I felt a sense of lightness I hadn't experienced in years. One night, as we walked along the Brooklyn promenade, the city skyline glittering in the distance, Ryan turned to me. "Emily, I know you've been through a lot," he said, his voice steady. "But I want you to know that I'm here for you. Whatever you need, whenever you need it." His sincerity brought tears to my eyes. For the first time since my world had fallen apart, I felt like I could trust someone again. Ryan wasn't trying to fix me or dismiss my pain. He was simply there, offering his presence and his heart. As we stood there, the cool breeze brushing against our faces, I realized that I was beginning to heal. Ryan wasn't just a distraction or a friend. He was becoming a part of my new life, a life I was slowly learning to love. Months passed, and life in New York began to feel more like home. My days were filled with work and my budding relationship with Ryan, whose unwavering support became a cornerstone of my healing. Slowly, I started to piece myself back together. Yet, as much as I tried to move forward, my past refused to let go completely. It began with a phone call from my mother. Her voice was strained, the kind of tone she used when she was about to ask something of me. "Emily," she said, "Ashley's been struggling. Things have been hard for her, and she could really use your help." I gripped the phone tightly, my pulse quickening. "What kind of help?" I asked cautiously. "She's been having financial trouble," my mother explained. "Mark left her in a tough spot, and now she's got bills piling up. If you could just send a little something to help her get back on her feet." My heart sank. The audacity of the request left me momentarily speechless. After everything Ashley had done, they expected me to swoop in and save her. I took a deep breath, trying to keep my voice steady. "Mom, I've just started building my own life again. I can't fix Ashley's problems." Her sigh was heavy, laden with disappointment. "Emily, you've always been the strong one in the family. Ashley's not like you. She needs us." I bit my lip, swallowing the anger rising in my chest. "She needed us before she betrayed me," I said quietly. "And now you're asking me to carry the weight of her choices?" The conversation ended tensely, but it wasn't the last. Over the next few weeks, the calls became more frequent. Each time, it was a new request: money for Ashley's rent, help with her credit card debt, support for this or that crisis. The guilt trips were relentless, painting Ashley as the victim and me as the one abandoning my family. Then came the breaking point. One evening, as I was preparing dinner, I overheard a hushed conversation during a video call with my parents. They didn't realize I was still connected. The screen minimized while I chopped vegetables. My mother's voice was calm but calculating. "We need to make sure Emily stays focused on helping," she said. "She's doing well in New York, and she can afford to help Ashley. We just need to remind her how much her family depends on her." Ashley chimed in, her voice filled with worry. "What if she starts prioritizing her own life? I've noticed she's been spending a lot of time with that guy, Ryan. What if he convinces her to cut ties completely?" "She won't," my mother replied confidently. "We'll keep her grounded. A few financial emergencies should do it. The knife in my hand fell to the cutting board with a loud clatter. My chest tightened as their words sank in. This wasn't about family or love. It was about control. They didn't see me as a person with my own needs and boundaries, they saw me as a resource to exploit. That night, I couldn't sleep. My mind replayed the conversation over and over. Each word cutting deeper. How had it come to this? How had the people I once trusted most turned into strangers who saw me as nothing more than a means to an end? The next morning, I made a decision. It was time to let go completely. No half measures. No lingering obligations. I wrote a letter to my parents. Carefully choosing my words. I expressed my love for them and for Ashley's children, my niece and nephew, who were blameless in all of this, but I made it clear that I could no longer be a part of their lives. I deserved to build a life free from manipulation and betrayal. I wrote, I hope one day you'll understand. But for now, I need to choose myself. I packed a small bag and left the letter on my kitchen counter, knowing it would be the last time I reached out. As I walked out the door, I felt a mix of grief and liberation. The weight of their expectations was gone. But so was the last thread connecting me to the people I had once called my family. Ryan met me at a nearby cafe, his expression full of concern. When I told him what had happened, he simply held my hand and said, I'm proud of you. You're doing what you need to do for yourself. His words were a balm to my aching heart. For the first time in years, I felt free. The road ahead was uncertain, but it was mine to walk. And that was all that mattered. The weeks following my final break with my family were filled with a mix of emotions, grief, relief, and the tentative joy of newfound freedom. Ryan became my anchor during this time, his steady presence reassuring me that I had made the right decision. With him, I could speak openly about the pain I was leaving behind without fear of judgment or pity. He didn't try to fix me, he simply listened. And in his quiet understanding, I found strength. One evening, as we shared takeout on my tiny apartment balcony, I let out a heavy sigh. The city lights glittered in the distance, a stark contrast to the emptiness I still felt inside. Ryan reached across the table, taking my hand in his. You don't have to carry it all alone, Emily, he said softly. You've been through so much. And you've come so far. Let yourself lean on me. His words struck a chord deep within me. For so long, I had believed that strength meant facing everything on my own. But Ryan was teaching me that vulnerability could be just as powerful. That night, as we watched the stars peek through the haze of the city, I allowed myself to imagine a future where my past didn't define me, a future with Ryan. Our relationship deepened over time, and with it came a growing sense of security and hope. We spent weekends exploring the city, discovering hidden gems like quiet bookstores and family-run diners. Ryan had a way of making even the most mundane moments feel special. Whether we were walking through Central Park or simply cooking dinner together, his presence turned each day into a small celebration of life's simple joys. One crisp autumn afternoon, as we strolled along the High Line, Ryan stopped suddenly. He turned to me, his expression uncharacteristically serious. Emily, he began, I know your past has been complicated, and I know you've been hurt in ways I can't fully understand. But I want you to know that I see you, the real you. And I love you. Tears welled in my eyes as I processed his words. For so long, I had felt unworthy of love, convinced that my brokenness made me too difficult to be with. But Ryan's love wasn't conditional or fleeting. It was steady, grounding, and exactly what I needed. I love you too, I whispered, my voice trembling with emotion. As our relationship flourished, we began to talk about building a future together. The idea of having a family was daunting, given my strained relationship with my own. But with Ryan, it felt possible. We dreamed of a life filled with love and laughter, free from the shadows of the past. In time, those dreams became reality. A year later, We married in a small ceremony surrounded by close friends. The simplicity of the day reflected our journey, no frills, no pretenses, just genuine love and commitment. Not long after, we welcomed our son, Lucas, into the world. Holding him for the first time, I felt an overwhelming sense of purpose and joy. He was a symbol of everything I had fought for: a fresh start, a new legacy. Raising Lucas with Ryan was both challenging and rewarding. We made a conscious effort to create a home filled with warmth, honesty, and mutual respect. I wanted Lucas to grow up knowing he was loved unconditionally, to feel the security I had so often lacked. Each laugh, each milestone, and each quiet moment with him reinforced my belief that I had made the right choices. Every now and then, memories of my family would resurface, unbidden and bittersweet. I thought of Ashley and her children, wondering how they were doing, but I knew that reaching out would only reopen old wounds. I had found peace in my decision to leave, and I wasn't willing to sacrifice that for the sake of a past that had no place in my present. One afternoon, as Lucas played with his toys on the living room floor, he picked up an old photo album I had tucked away on a bookshelf. Flipping through the pages, he stopped at a picture of me as a child, standing beside Ashley. "Mommy, who's that?" he asked, his voice filled with innocent curiosity. I hesitated, my heart tightening. "That's someone I used to know," I said softly. "A long time ago." Lucas nodded, accepting the answer without question, and returned to his toys. As I watched him, I felt a wave of gratitude wash over me. My life wasn't perfect, but it was mine, built on love, resilience, and the courage to choose a better path. In Ryan and Lucas, I had found my true family, one defined not by obligation or blood, but by the bonds we chose to nurture. The past would always be a part of me, but it no longer controlled me. I had learned to let go, and in doing so, I had found the freedom to create a life worth living. In the end, I found peace not by clinging to the past but by letting it go. The betrayal, the heartbreak, and the pain had shaped me, but they didn't define me. With Ryan by my side and our son Lucas filling our home with laughter, I discovered that family is about love, trust, and the people who choose to stand by you. Life has its scars, but those scars remind me of how far I've come and the strength I've gained along the way. As I watch Lucas grow, I'm reminded every day of the beauty in second chances and new beginnings. My journey taught me that it's never too late to rebuild and find happiness on your own terms. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to Life Stories for more heartfelt tales. Thank you for watching, and see you next time.